Okay, I'd like to start by thanking the organizers for inviting me here to share with you some of the different models that we have in Singapore that we use to build our public libraries over there. I know many of you, when you hear about Singapore public libraries, the first impression you get is that they are adequately funded and very well-used places and well-loved places by our community. So if that is the case, then why do we need to look at alternative methods of funding our public libraries? You can't do it. Okay, I'll just go on first. Just to give you a little background about our libraries before I come back to that question about why we have to look at alternative methods of funding. In Singapore, there are 26 public libraries spread out across Singapore in varying sizes and locations in Singapore. We have big libraries, which are the regional libraries, and then we have about 12 smaller libraries located in our shopping centres. And the shopping centres libraries are our most popular and well-loved and used libraries. This is one day in our public libraries. The Singaporeans use our public library. Before we open our public libraries each day, there's usually a long queue of people waiting to come into the libraries. And our peak periods are usually weekends and school holidays. But these are average figures on each day across the 26 libraries. So you can see that they are well-used places. We've been spending the last year or so trying to work out on how we can keep the public libraries as part of the lives of Singaporeans moving forward when there are so many other things to distract them from our libraries. We've come up with 4 pillars that we think will get us there. The first is to use data to analyze the data on patron behavior as well as their profiles so that we can develop services that will meet their needs. The second is to revamp our libraries, and we will do this over the next 5 years, 5 to 6 years. We will revamp all our libraries to make them libraries of what we perceive to be the future libraries. And one key component of that will be to integrate our digital and our physical services and spaces. And the fourth is what I'm going to focus on today, which is what we call the 3P partnership. A partnership that taps on the talent and the community support. And now I come to why do we need to look at a 3P partnership when actually Singapore public libraries are pretty well funded by the government. The answer is simple. There is a greater demand for libraries than there is a supply. We have 26 libraries, but we frequently get requests from mall developers to set up libraries. We get requests from community leaders to set up libraries in the community. The government has only a limited budget that also needs to fund housing, transport, and healthcare, and therefore cannot fund many of these other requests that are coming in. So instead of just telling them, I'm sorry, we can't do it, we looked at other ways of answering that same question. And the other issue that we have in Singapore is also manpower. Because our population is actually a decreasing one, we have actually manpower constraints. And over the next few years, we are supposed to actually cut the number of manpower that we have in each library by 5%. So that's over 3 years, 15% is a large number for us. So I'd like to share with you this model, which is the library at Chinatown model. It is the full-blown concept of the 3P partnership that we have in Singapore. This library was requested for by a developer in this area called Chinatown. We went in there and we did a feasibility study, and we found there was a need for a library there because there were many senior Chinese citizens there that spent their days in coffee shops and sitting on benches around the area. However, we were not able to secure funding for setting up a library there. The landlord then came to us and said that they would give us the space in the shopping centre and fit out the library for us, but they could not give us the operating cost. So we went out and we found another sponsor, that is the Kuan Yin Hut Temple, to give us a fund, and they were willing to sponsor this library in terms of its operations for 10 years, with a midpoint review and a report from us on every year how the library is doing. we then had to move on because we had the money now, but we didn't have the staff and all the funding to employ staff to run the library. So we went on from the private partnership to the people partnership, and that's where we engaged the community. We brought them in early to help us select the material and the books for the library, and then we moved on to engage them as volunteers. So the library is now currently run and has been running. This library was opened in 2013. It has been running now for 2 years just purely on volunteers. The volunteers are given this t-shirt, and the public come in, know that it's a volunteer-run library, so their expectations are different, and surprisingly, even their behavior is different. They look after the library better than our other libraries because they know there are no staff there to pick up after them. We have 60 volunteers now, 20 active regular volunteers, and 20 is larger than our staff strength that we have in our other libraries. So, and the volunteers do a variety of things as listed in the slide here. The secret to keeping the people partnership is to give them recognition and acknowledgement. So as you come into the Chinatown Library, you will see that big poster on the right or on your left that has a picture of all the volunteers, the active ones that contribute towards the upkeep and running of the library. And for individual shelves that the volunteers look after, we actually have a poster there. So this is Wai Ling, who looks after the travel shelf, and she takes pride in looking after the shelf because her photo is there and people recognize her. And when people are looking for books, they tend to go to the volunteers that are actually maintaining that collection because they know the collection pretty well. So to keep your volunteers, you really need to give them some recognition and engage them a lot. Of course, this being the first library that was run with volunteers, we got a lot of publicity from the newspapers. And that is a good thing because now you have engaged the media to help you further your cause. The publicity was so impactful that actually the president of the Singapore's president, Dr. Tony Tan, actually came and made a request to come down to the library and talk to the volunteers. And that, of course, got us even greater publicity. And it was not the publicity that was important, but it created an awareness. And with that, we got more volunteers coming on board to help us run this particular library. And from there, they actually moved on to helping us in other libraries as well. And the people and the public part, of course, was us, where we contributed in engaging the volunteers and curating the programs and also developing the collections for that library. I just want to give you a few more examples where the 3 Ps are not in equal proportion, but out of the Chinatown Library, which was one developer, CP1, another developer came to us, City Developers, and asked us whether they could do a library for us under their CSR project. And we weren't going to set up a library at that point in time, so they took one of our children's library and they set up the first green children's library, a library made up of all recycled material. And they then used their own contractors, their lighting contractor, their IT contractor, and they did this children's library as part of their own CSR. We also wanted to engage the people, so we, I don't know whether you can see, but the ceiling decoration of this library is actually made up of these plastic water bottles. So we actually did a drive from the children and the community to collect these water bottles and, put it up there, and they feel that they contributed to setting up this library. We also created a mascot for the library, and that mascot, everyone voted, the children voted, and they voted the squirrel as their mascot, so the squirrel is the mascot there. And we have people coming in to do volunteer programming. And then we got publicity too. We also have other areas where people have sponsored. We have a Molly bus that goes out to the underserved. That is also donated by the Kuan Yin Hut Temple. There are 3 buses running now. We had 1 old bus, and now we have 3 new buses. We have a Deliver Me project where we take books out to the those that can't, homebound, and that's run by our taxi drivers who volunteer their service and their taxis to deliver the books. And this is part of the Molly. We have a Kids Read program that we just celebrated the 10th year, and that's a volunteer-based program. The community engages the volunteers, and we train them, and we give them the curriculum and the books and they run the programs to teach our low-income children and nurture the reading habit in them. We have another public partnership that I want to share with you is this one, storytelling. This one came about because of manpower constraints that we had, and we wanted to cut the number of storytelling sessions we had. But a group of parents approached us and said that they felt the storytelling was very valuable, and if we could train them, they would conduct the sessions for us. And that's exactly what we did, and they now run the storytelling sessions going for a year, and we give them a training program. Okay, and we appreciate our volunteers once a year with our minister, so that adds to their efforts. We've been cited as case studies. The benefits, of course, outweigh the challenges, and I want to tell you the main benefit is we've been able to open libraries where we otherwise couldn't have. We have done services which we otherwise wouldn't be able to do. And the greatest and the most impactful result of all this is the community ownership. The community feels that they now own these libraries, and they speak up for us, and they demand libraries in Singapore. So I would like to tell you, don't look at your limitations as something that constrain you, but use them as opportunities to go out and try to do something differently, and you will be surprised by the results that you can get. Thank you.